Terminus, the fourth serial of Doctor Who's 20th season, first broadcast in 4 parts from the 15th to the 23rd of February 1983, and written by Stephen Gallagher. Now this is the fourth serial of the 20th season. It's also the second part of the Black Guardian trilogy that started with Mordred Undead and would end with Enlightenment. But this is also the final story and the departure story for Sarah Sutton's Nyssa, as she would depart Doctor Who at the end of this serial. Now, what's the setup? Well, with Turlough, played by Mark Strix, now joined the TARDIS, Tegan Javanka, played by Janet Fielding, doesn't necessarily trust him all that much. And that's fair enough to consider, because Turlough is still talking to the Black Guardian, played by Valentin Dayal, who I looked up, he was actually the Black Guardian also in the Armageddon Factor back in 1979, so yes, this was a true return for the character. Now, under the Black Guardian's destruction, Turlough ends up trying to sabotage part of the TARDIS, and this causes several rooms of the TARDIS to mysteriously phase out, and the crew suddenly find themselves entering a new mysterious spaceship through a kind of door in Nyssa's room. Nyssa, played by Sarah Sutton, and the Fifth Doctor, played by Peter Davison, head off into the ship to investigate, to escape from the kind of phasing and ultimately investigate where they are. Tegan and Turlough also end up kind of entering the new ship, but the door ends up closing before they can go back, so they end up kind of parallel, kind of going along and finding out stuff about the ship themselves. Now this is one element I do actually like. I do like with the previous Doctor Who story, The Romans, I do like how Tegan and Turlough kind of have their own adventure aboard the ship, irrespective of the Doctor and Nyssa. Which is, it's nice to know that they're two stories going on, they're kind of parallel to each other at the time, and only towards the end do they reconnect back up. Now, it turns out they are on board a spaceship heading for spaceship Terminus. And Terminus, well, the ship is full of people who are suffering from Lazars, a leprosy-style kind of disease. And they're basically on a leper ship, effectively. And they're heading towards Terminus. Terminus is a spaceship that supposedly has the cure for Lazars. However, when they get there, they end up finding various characters, not just the people suffering from the disease. There are also 2 raiders named Carrie, played by Lisa Goddard, and Olvir, played by Dominic Gard, who they've mainly just come to the ship trying to just raid it for various supplies. But then they also encounter the Veneer. Now, the Veneer are supposed to kind of be like doctors on board Terminus. They... guys, how to explain this? But they've kind of become distant over the years, and the kind of leader of the Veneer, Arak, played by Martin Potter, they're mainly just there to accept the Lazars and get them into where they will supposedly be treated. Because it turns out the treatment for this condition they have is basically a large amount of radiation. And they're usually handled after that by the Garm, a giant creature that they control, well, partially control by a kind of remote signal. And the Garm is voiced by R.J. Bell. And the Veneer have kind of become distant, they've kind of become detached from the whole situation, mainly because very few people, there are some people who have managed to survive Lazars and recover from the treatment, but it's about 1 in 500,000, so like very few people actually survive the process, and the Veneer have just kind of become used to that. They have their own kind of medicine that they need to keep them alive, which is produced and supplied by the Terminus Incorporated company, and that drug is Hydromel. Basically, it's a kind of liquid-like substance in tubes that they have to insert into their radiation armor in order to kind of keep themselves alive. Meanwhile, while investigating, the Doctor and Carrie end up finding out that the ship is effectively at the centre of the universe. And the Doctor reveals that this ship used to be capable of time travel. It said it still was. And when travelling through time, it ended up pretty much at the beginning of everything, and it had a fuel leak. So they vented a lot of the fuel from... There are two engines. They vented a lot of fuel from one of the engines, and the spark caused a massive explosion. Turns out that's the Big Bang. However, this turns out to be a problem because they soon find out that the kind of system is preparing to vent fuel from the other engine, and if one bang caused the Big Bang, caused the creation of all life in the universe, the other one could very well end it. So it's a kind of race against time to find out what's happening and ultimately put a step to rights. Now, as I said, they do end up meeting, apart from Carrie and Olvir, they also end up meeting various members of the Veneer, including, as I said, Erak, the leader, played by Martin Potter, a competition of him named Valgard, played by Andrew Burt, Sigurd, played by Tim Monroe, and Bohr, a Veneer who ends up falling ill from, I think, radiation poisoning, played by Peter Benson. And they do manage to do some good stuff in it. I do like that while you're initially scared of the Garm creature and think it's rather monstrous, by the end, in the last serial, when it can actually talk, it does actually prove to be quite a reasonable creature, which is nice to see. But towards the end of the story, Valgard does actually manage to kind of get one over on Erak and become the new leader of the Veneer. And Nyssa, using her kind of knowledge of medicine and her knowledge of science, says that she can create a new version of Hydromel that isn't supplied by the company, that the Veneer can make for themselves so they won't rely so much on Terminus, and that she suggests that they actually do turn Terminus into a proper kind of hospital, a place where people suffering from Lazars and various other symptoms can come to ultimately be cured. And so at the end of the story, as the Doctor and co prepare to depart, Nyssa says that she wishes to stay on Terminus and ultimately use the knowledge that she gained on Traken to ultimately do some good. The Doctor and Tegan do ask her if she is sure she wants to do this, because if she is sure, it's going to be a one-way trip. Like, there isn't really any coming back for her with this, but Nyssa seems certain of it, and so that's how they end up departing. Now, there is an extra wrinkle that has been provided in 2020 with this particular story, because for some of you who may remember the YouTube video of Farewell Sarah Jane released in 2020 that detailed Sarah Jane Smith's funeral, it was revealed in the kind of narration there that Nyssa and Tegan had reunited and become a couple. Now, there are several problems with this as a theory, given that Janet Fielding as Tegan did return in The Power of the Doctor, and she didn't mention Nyssa at all. But also, there's a question of how exactly did Nyssa get back from Terminus? I mean, it's a bit of a question as to how that happened, but overall, I think Terminus is a decent story. It's not the most interesting one out there, and I think in terms of which story I prefer of the Black Guardian trilogy so far, until I see Enlightenment, I think so far my favourite is Mordrin Undead, even if that did have problems of its own. But yeah, Terminus, I think it's a good story, and if you want a good Doctor Who story, this is a good one to go for. Anyway, until next time, see ya.